Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. For today's video, we're going to be doing an in-depth spoiler review video essay of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So this isn't just for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, this is going to be for 1, 2 and 3, so the full trilogy of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy here. So let's get into it. So I do want to apologize first if I do sound a bit off. I'm still recovering from that cold. Feel like I'm about 70% there, so apologies if I do sound a bit off here. And also timestamps will be in the description down below for like anything in particular we're going to be talking about, whether it's volume 1, volume 2, or especially with volume 3 and everything in between. So timestamps will be in the description down below. And also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos. I post in-depth spoiler reviews. There's going to be one for The Last of Us, which honestly I've been meaning to post for like the last couple of weeks here, so that's also going to be coming to the channel. And also I do weekly entertainment news videos. Just posted one about Captain America 4 update with Seth Rollins joining the MCU, so link will be somewhere around here, so go ahead, check that out. But also sub to the channel so that you don't miss out on those weekly entertainment news videos. But without further ado, let's get into the Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn's Marvel trilogy here. And for me, honestly, one of the best MCU trilogies in the MCU basically here. A lot of debate going on over the weekend regarding the best MCU trilogy. For me, this one and the Captain America trilogy are probably the top two joint first one up. They're really well written. James Gunn just did a fantastic job with this movie. Now first I want to get out the way is the Stan Lee cameos. So obviously Stan Lee, who sadly passed away a few years ago, wasn't able to appear in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but his first two cameos, especially the one in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, honestly was just a really nice touch there. So you've got Stan Lee basically just in this planet in his chair talking to the Watchers, and you see like the real life version of the Watchers. Obviously we saw them in the animated show What If, but we got to see them in live action here with Stan Lee there. And just the first one in the first volume with The Rock basically calling him a perv, talking to the this female character here. So just really nice cameo scenes that I thought were really well done. My favorite one is the volume 2 one out of both volume 1 and 2, so I really like that. Really great cameos from Stan Lee there, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But first one I want to talk about is obviously volume 1, the movie that honestly I don't think anybody was expecting how great this movie was going to be. When this first announced, I had no clue who these characters were. I was going in there with very low expectations, and I came out there with honestly the most highest praisal you could give a movie. This movie was just a brilliant way to introduce the Guardians of the Galaxy characters. James Gunn did a fantastic job, and I'll be talking about this as we're progressing through the movie here, but everything he did, and I'm going to be again talking about this throughout the whole spoiler review here, but James Gunn just wrote everything perfectly when it comes to each character, each storyline, each character arc going through it. Every little detail was planned from volume 1 all the way to volume 3. You don't get that a lot now when you're especially writing trilogies. The best example I can give you, which is a mess of a trilogy, is the latest Star Wars movies, episode 7, 8 and 9. But also when it comes to like MCU as well, like Ant-Man for example, the 3 movies just not as connected as how it could have been. But whereas Guardians of the Galaxy, every little thing was just connected perfectly between each set of volumes there. So honestly, James Gunn did brilliant work with it, and that's what you need when you have to write a perfect trilogy, is to set up everything from the first movie to the third movie. Have obviously things going in between, but set up everything nicely and wrap up everything beautifully, which I thought was done well. But when it comes to the volume 1, you have this opening sequences of you see the young version of Quill, the child version of Quill, watching his mother die and then just getting abducted by the Ravagers, Yondu and the rest of the Ravagers here. So we get to see the backstory of Peter Quill here, and then the soundtrack too. Like the soundtrack again, once again, for all 3 volumes here was just perfectly done, perfectly executed. The soundtrack when it comes to the opening sequences here, as you get to see adult Quill here, I just thought was standout. James Gunn did a fantastic job when it comes to the score for each 3 movies. Obviously, if you're going to rank them, for me personally, I would rank the score for volume 1 as the best one, but the other 2 scores were just perfectly done and executed as well. But then you have this sequence of adult Quill. Now he's in this planet trying to take the orb, which we'll later discuss more about, but he takes the orb, he basically turns his back on Yondu and the Ravagers for this orb to go and get his prize, basically. And so when he does arrive into this planet, Xandar, the guy basically confirms like what it is, so he just backs out of the deal, and that's where we get introduced to the rest of the Guardians. So you get to see Gamora, who we got to see a bit of preview with when it comes to Gamora and Nebula, and you got Ronan, who is the main villain of the movie, which we'll also be discussing. But so then you get Gamora basically taking the orb from Quill, and then we get to see the other Guardians of the Galaxy duo, where you get to see Rocket and Groot. So this is where we get introduced, and we get to see that cameo from Stanley that I mentioned. We get to see Rocket just basically shit talking everybody that's around him. We get to see the dynamic between Groot and Rocket here, and so then Rocket sees Quill and sees how much credit he's worth in terms of kidnapping him, and then you just have these all-out brawl between all four of them there. You've got Gamora versus Quill versus Rocket versus Groot, so just an all-out battle between the four of them there. Great introduction to like the crew that we're going to be exploring for the next 3 movies, just all of them battling with one another here. And so after they all go back and forth, kidnapping one another, stealing the orb from one another, they get captured by the police, the intergalactic police of Xandar, who then takes them to a prisoner ship, where then we get to see the little hints and details that I mentioned here. So for example, when they were showing Rocket, obviously in volume 3 we saw a whole bunch of explanations in terms of Rocket's backstory. We get to see who he was close with, what happened to him. So in volume 1, where they are taken to the ship and they are given like the details in the screen and everything of like their backstory, you get to see Rocket's version shows friends, alliances, it says Lila there. So James Gunn already planted the seed for that. And then we see Rocket's back, you see like these little dots on his back, you see like that he has been experimented on. So these seeds have been planted for Rocket's backstory here. Also, little hints about everybody's character too. So for example, with Peter Quill, he has this Walkman where he's got the music there. You get to see this throughout the whole trilogy of movies. So for example, when one of the guards was taking the Walkman, playing the music here, you get to see like his reaction to that, how it's so personal for him, and also what he does later on after the escape of the prison sequence here, which I'll bring up too. But you get to see his connection to the Walkman there. You get to see the little hints of nobody understanding what Groot is saying, because all he says is "I am Groot." And also, again, little planting of the seed for the end of the volume 3 movie, so which we'll again talk about. So you just get a little of backstory, little hints, little seeds planting for each character for the rest of the trilogy of what's to come. But they get entered into the prison, and once again the score for these characters when they are getting taken through the prison sequence, can't remember the top of my head what you call it, but you get to see like the score for that particular scene. And we get to see, because of Gamora's backstory, because of her relationship to Thanos, being Thanos' daughter, you see the prisoners and their reaction to her. One in particular, which is the next member of the Guardians here, is Drax. We get to see his interaction and just that beautiful introduction to his scene where he's wanting to kill Gamora. You've got Quill trying to save her life, wanting to do this little sequence here of
that's when you...
Why would I put my finger on his throat?
What?
Which honestly I just found really perfectly written there. Just brilliant introduction to each character here. So you're starting to build and you're starting to get to know these characters. So then they're planning the escape, and you get to see Rocket's sense of humor where Quill has to steal a leg for no apparent reason there, but you get to see them going back and forth here. So they get into like the little pod inside the prison where Rocket is planning the escape. You get to see a little bit of hints of each other's backstory as well, where you mention Drax and what happened to him when it comes to his backstory and his family and what Thanos has done. You also have like these little one-liners and banter with one another there. So you get to see Gamora's line about saying how she's gonna die with a bunch of imbeciles.
I'm gonna die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the galaxy.
I have lived most of my life surrounded by my enemies. I will be grateful to die among my friends.
Little lines about metaphors before Drax, which was also brought up in volume 3 as well. So just like these little lines that just are perfectly set up for you. Nothing is wasted basically, but you get to see these banter with one another, these lines that are throwing with one another. You get to see the interaction as us as the audience of how these characters we're going to be watching for the next 2 hours or so, how they're interacting with one another, and you're gaining that attachment to each of the characters to this unit here, where they eventually do escape. They get onto Quill's ship, and again, basically, if you haven't seen volume 3, this is a spoiler review, so I'm pretty sure if you haven't seen it, I would go check out the movie before coming to this, because it's going to be all spoilers here. But with Quill, once again, he's going after his Walkman. The prison is in chaos. It's a shit show right now, but his priority is going after the Walkman.
You're an imbecile.
Which I honestly, James Gunn's humor and the lines that are delivered are just pitch perfect. But you see Quill going after the Walkman in this movie before leaving to escape the prison, because that's his priority. Similar to what happens in volume 3 towards the third act, where you thought he was going to die after Adam Warlock saves him. You see him going after his Walkman because it dropped. So you just have that little similarities between volume 1, volume 2. James Gunn sticks with the character personalities, the character traits that each character has got, and that's what Quill, his personality traits is a Walkman, is a really top priority for him. He is attached to that, so you get to see that in both volumes there. So they managed to escape the ship and they managed to escape the prison. So with the orb that they have got, they go to the planet Nowhere, where they go visit the Collector to basically hand over the orb. We get a little backstory, because what's good about James Gunn's trilogy here is that it's all standalone. It's just not interconnected with the rest of the MCU. You have got little bits of hints of the Infinity Stones and Thanos and that kind of stuff, but it more or less is a standalone trilogy here. But with this particular scene, we get to see that explanation, the setup to Thanos's Infinity Stone adventures. Basically here you get to see a little backstory of the Celestials, the Infinity Stones here. So a little bit of backstory about that. But for me, the heart of where you really fall in love with these characters is this particular sequence when they are in Nowhere, because you get to see Peter Quill and Gamora having this closeness, getting more understanding of each character there, the little dialogue that they have with one another, the interaction that they have with one another, building them closer to each other. Then you see the bickering, the fighting. You've got Drax and Rocket, and the lines that Rocket delivers really hit home after you've watched volume 3, where he's just delivering lines like,
"Well, I didn't ask to get made. I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over and turned into some little monster."
Rocket, no one's calling you a monster.
He called me vermin. She called me rodent.
and so again, you, after watching volume 3, after seeing Rocket's backstory, hearing what he's saying here just really hits home and really delivers when it comes to his lines. And obviously Bradley Cooper, they release clips of him voicing Rocket, and he really goes into this role. He kills it playing Rocket Raccoon here. But after they're all going back and forth bickering with one another, we come to find out that basically Drax called Ronan to have this face-to-face, because Ronan is part of the people that killed his family here. So Drax basically wants to confront Ronan here. We also get to see when the Collector is talking about the Infinity Stone, the power of it, you have one of his servants or whatever they're called here trying to touch the Power Stone just to explode the building here. And so there's this big action sequences here. You've got Nebula with this fleet going after Rocket and Gamora and Quill in the ships here. You've got Drax taking on Ronan, just getting overpowered by Ronan here. So then you've got Nebula just blasting these ships here. That's when you get to see the real emotion, real heart of these characters here, where you've got Gamora out in space, Quill going to try and save Gamora, you've got Rocket's concern for Quill. So you just got all of this connection building with these characters here. They're starting to understand each other, starting to get close to one another here. Quill nearly sacrificing himself to save Gamora, but then just in time Yondu and the Ravagers come to pick up Gamora and Quill, while Rocket goes back to check on Groot, because him and Groot need to just escape. Now that Ronan has the Power Stone, he's extremely powerful now, so they need to get out of here. And so again, I talk about the connection, I talk about the building between one another here. You've got Groot now being the soul, the heart and the soul of the group, with all hope being lost, wanting to be the sensible one, wanting to go save all his friends, go save his family. You get to see from the beginning of the movie where these characters fighting one another, just no connection with each other, to now building this family relationship bond with one another, or with each character has that chance to shine, which I just thought was so brilliantly written. And so then they're gonna go try and rescue Gamora and Quill from the Ravagers. We see Ronan basically, now that he has the Power Stone, turn his back on Thanos because he thinks that he's powerful. And honestly, when it comes to Ronan as the villain of the movie, I do think it was slightly weak villain. If you're comparing them to all three volumes here, all three villains, for me he's a tie between second and third when it comes to him and Ego the Planet as like the two villains there. I'll talk about it more in the third act, but he just didn't have like that powerful presence there. The backstory was a little bit weak, should have been fleshed out more, and just his decision makings, especially in the third act, just baffled me too. But when it comes to like Ronan as a villain, not as strong. But once he has turned his back on Thanos, him and Nebula are going to go and try and destroy Xandar because of this backstory that they have with the Kree and Xandar. So he is on his way to go destroy the planet there. And that's where you get Quill and Gamora convincing the Ravagers, convincing Yondu to go and save Xandar, basically tricking them into thinking that there is a score, basically using the Power Stone as like the source of what they're going to get out of it for saving Xandar. So then you go into this third act where you've got this big battle sequences here. You've got Ronan's ship, you've got the Ravagers in their ships flying, so you've got like this little flying sequences, ship battling with one another here. You've got the Xandar police or the army or whatever you're calling them there joining the fight to try and stop Ronan here. So you've got the battles going on outside of the ship with all these people flying there. You got to see Yondu with his little sequences with his arrow on the floor, so you got a little bit of a shout out. Great sequence with Yondu there. Inside the ship, you've got Drax, you've got Gamora, you've got Quill, you've got Groot, and eventually Rocket also joins in. So you've got these battle sequences here. You get to see great action sequence with Groot and Drax battling the creatures, these aliens on the ship here. You get to see Drax versus Ronan once again. They blast Ronan thinking that they destroyed him, only for like Ronan to survive. The ship goes crashing. You see Gamora try to rescue Nebula, but Nebula wants none of that there. You still have this little battle sequences with these two, this tension with the two of them there. But once they figure out that Ronan is still alive, the ship's crashing, all hope is lost. You have that beautiful sequence of Groot sacrificing himself.
We are Groot.
You see the emotion in Rocket. His sacrifice means that they survived the ship's crash. And then you have the final sequence here where, this is what's frustrating for me here, is you've got Ronan standing there while Quill is singing and dancing in front of him. Like, you're this big bad villain, you're ready to destroy the planet, you have the Power Stone, and you're just standing there with, it's just like the look on his face too, this dumb look that he has on his face while watching Peter dance. Yeah, I get it's a distraction, but for me that was just very dumb in terms of like you being the villain watching somebody dance in front of you. So because of Peter Quill distracting him, having this dance off, that gives a chance for Drax and Rocket to like shoot him, and Peter Quill managed to grab the Power Stone, and then this connection that they have with the rest of the Guardians. So you see Gamora, where a little flashback of Quill seeing his mother saying to take my hand, having the present flash of Gamora saying the same thing, grabbing Gamora's hand, Drax grabbing Quill on the shoulder, Rocket's little finger holding Drax, them establishing themselves as being the Guardians of the Galaxy, holding the Power Stone, killing Ronan, destroying Ronan, saving Xandar basically, and wrapping up the movie. But you got to see them now basically getting the praise that they are from the Xandar people, them also now joining together, confirming that they are a crew, going into Quill's ship to fly and go off on the next adventure basically, wrapping up an excellent, brilliant introduction to this character's introduction to Volume 1, first movie for the trilogy here. So I thought was really well done, really wrapped up. One of my favourite movies in the MCU here, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, I thought was just excellently done here. So then we move on to Volume 2, which I believe takes place a couple of months after the events of the first movie in terms of like the MCU timeline. I'll be honest, when it comes to this one here, for me, this is one of the weaker ones out of the trilogy. If we're going to rank them here, Volume 2 is for me the bottom of the list. Overall, it's a really great movie, but there's just a lot of flaws when it comes to the actual movie in itself. However, it's still an excellent movie, a really fun movie here. So basically this movie kicks off with the opening sequences here. So you get to see the Guardians of the Galaxy basically taking on this monster for the Sovereign, basically Aisha, who we see in this movie and also see in Volume 3. She's hired the Guardians of the Galaxy to take down this monster to help save the Anarlax batteries, which I think I butchered the name, but the battery is basically here in exchange for a prisoner they had. So this opening sequence here, you see these characters here, you see Rocket, you see Groot dancing away with the music here, you've got Rocket, Gamora, Drax, Quill trying to battle this monster, for Drax to just go inside the monster and just kill him. His reaction to like going inside the monster I thought was just hilarious. But you have this opening sequence, they finally battle this monster, they beat the monster, and the prisoner that they have was actually Nebula, who was also trying to steal the Anurax batteries. So they just basically get Nebula away. You see Rocket actually do steal the batteries there, so that's where you get the Sovereigns chasing after them after they get into the ship. You get to see them chasing after the Guardians here because of the batteries being stolen by Rocket, and his brilliant reason as to why he did it was just hilarious. Like, Rocket's one-liners in this movie were particularly well done.
What were you thinking?
Dude, they were really easy to steal.
That's your defense?
But because of them getting chased by the Sovereigns, their ship gets crashed. You see them crashing into this planet, but basically you have this little man, which we come to find out is going to be Ego. He basically saves them, causing all the Sovereigns' ships to implode, basically. And so they end up crashing onto the planet. I believe it was, I think it's an anagram for Herbert. It might be pronounced differently there. But actually, just before we do that, we actually do get a little bit of like hints and stuff like that in the... After they get into the ship, you see little hints about Quill talking about his father when it comes to like Gamora, so you get a bit of backstory and a bit of hints of what's to come. Also, we get an understanding and we start building Nebula's character arc as well from what she was doing in the previous movie. Basically, you still see the tension between her and Gamora, but you start building on this character arc that she's going to go through throughout this movie. So after they end up crashing into the planet, we come to get introduced to Ego, who is Quill's father, who is convincing them to basically take them to his planet to learn more about Quill's backstory and where he's coming from and what he needs and everything. So then you have the crew split up, basically. So you've got Rocket, Groot and Nebula left in this planet while Rocket's trying to fix the ship. You've got Drax, Gamora and Quill going with Ego and his assistant Mantis to their planet to basically find out more about Quill's backstory here. And so one of the frustrating things about this movie as well is that like there's plots are all over the place when it comes to this here. So basically the opening sequences and the situation here with the Sovereigns and the Anurax battery and all that kind of stuff, then you're focusing on the next plot, which is going to be Quill's father and Ego and all of that situation here. But that's sort of just left on the back burner for a little bit, because then we get to focus on Yondu and the Ravagers and that sort of subplot that's going on here. So basically we see where Yondu and the Ravagers are. We get to see a nice little character arc with Yondu, especially in this movie, where he is on this planet, the Ravagers are there. We come to find out that Sylvester Stallone, who a random celebrity who I never thought would be in the MCU, was in the MCU. So he's basically comes to find out that because Yondu was at this establishment, they refused to go there. That establishment has basically lost a whole bunch of customers for the Ravagers. And then you get to see the Yondu and Sylvester Stallone confrontation, where we come to find out that the reason why Yondu is basically exiled from the Ravagers and the Code is because he abducted Quill, because he took her child, and we get to learn more about the backstory of why that is. But with Sylvester Stallone's line about how he'll never have like the Ravagers funeral, little hints and setup of what's to come, basically foreshadowing that. And honestly, I'm just going to focus on the Ravagers plot first rather than go into like shot for shot, because then you start seeing this tension here. You've got to see these other characters in the Ravagers, in Yondu's Ravagers, start to question Yondu and start to question him as a leader. You've got this one particular character, Taserface, which him being a villain, I guess, I don't think he was all that threatening or anything like that. And even the name too, Taserface, just ridiculous writing, to be honest with you. But once they find out where Rocket is and Groot is, you get to see the turning of the tide. Basically, they find Rocket, they find Groot, and they capture them, only for like this dissension between the ranks to come into play. You see Kraglin, who sort of started the mutiny, regretting the mutiny. You get to see Nebula basically shooting Yondu. The mutiny started. They're in the Ravager ship where they're kicking out old Ravagers, the one that followed Yondu, killing them off. Nebula takes the ship and flies off. We'll find out where she is later on in the movie. But so you've got Rocket and Yondu in a prison. They're torturing Groot. Eventually Kraglin and Groot pluck up the courage to try and rescue Yondu and Rocket by taking the arrowhead the thing that goes on Yondu's head and killing all the Ravagers and everything like that before escaping. I just thought that whole plot, I understand what they're doing with Yondu's character arc and Yondu's story, but it's just the whole sequence when it comes to like Taserface and the mutiny and all that kind of stuff just took a lot in terms of the movie itself. So that plot was a lot of focus, while Quill and Ego sort of were just put on the back burner for a little bit. So once we do go back to like Ego and Quill and everything like that for the second act, mostly not a lot really happened there. You got to see a little bit of backstory when you get to see these really nice written scenes when it comes to Gamora and Quill, them just getting that closeness, getting this unspoken thing that they're hinting at throughout the whole movie. We also got a really nice dialogue of Drax explaining his daughter and like a bit of like history when it comes to like his family with Mantis.
Those pools, they remind me of a time when I took my daughter through the forgotten lakes of my homeworld. She was like you,
This gas thing?
innocent.
Drax and Mantis's relationship, especially in this movie, I thought was just overdone by a lot, because throughout the whole movie you've got Drax basically insulting Mantis a lot, like really going hard on Mantis, insulting her appearance, insulting everything about her, even to the point where he's like throwing up when he thought she was trying to sleep with him. So it was funny at times, but just really overdone a lot in the sequences here. Like you have these really nice scenes of him talking about the family, talking about his daughter, just Mantis getting to know him more. Then you've got like silly scenes about him being repulsed by her, him laughing so overtly, so much when she reveals Quill's feelings for Gamora and everything like that. So a lot was just overdone. But also in the second act you just got to see more of like Ego playing dad with Quill, them just focusing on like the powers. You get to see why Quill, a little bit of backstory with him is why he was able to survive holding the Power Stone, because he's like half of a god with a little g. We find out that Ego did have a penis. That's how he was able to create Quill basically here. So lots of like unnecessary sequences and unnecessary scenes, just sort of like slowing down the movie for me a little bit, especially in that second act, because like I said, you've got the subplot of the Ravagers, but then when we go back to Quill and Ego, it's sort of like these sort of like explanations, these sort of like sequences that are taking place here. And so as we're slowly building towards the third act, we get to see where Nebula is. So Nebula, she's got this ship, she's shooting Gamora in this planet here. They're going back and forth fighting with one another. We finally get a breakthrough between the two of them in terms of their relationship. We get to see Nebula, we get to see Gamora, their points of view of what's going on, especially what like Thanos has done to them here, which I thought was really well written. Like Nebula's character arc, for me, she is one of the better characters in this whole trilogy here, and she's definitely a standout in volume 3. But basically you get to see the reason as to all she wanted was a sister, all Gamora wanted was to win. So we're finally getting a little bit of backstory here with the two of them. We're getting a breakthrough with the two of them, and then we also now find out that what Ego's plan is, what he's doing basically, and that is that basically Ego has been going around creating children, doing the same thing he's doing with Quill, but with them not going well. It's basically just killing them off here. And so we find out that Ego is the one that killed Quill's mother and is trying to get him to basically help him just destroy like other worlds here basically. Mantis reveals this to Drax, Gamora and Nebula, so they need to go and rescue Quill. They finally get a hold of Rocket and Yondu, so they're going to like rescue the rest of the crew basically here. But then we move into like the third act now, and again like I mentioned, like because the third act is now focusing on Ego and stuff like that, the reveal I timed it was at 1 hour and 53 minutes of the movie. So like most of the movie just like focusing on other things, and then you get to the reveal of Ego being the big bad villain, being the one that's killed hundreds of children, taking his seeds basically, destruction and chaos everywhere and every other planet basically now. And so you've got the third act where everybody's trying to take down Ego. So as they're arriving to like the planet's core, they're trying to find a way to defeat Ego. Rocket uses the Anulax battery to create a bomb that Groot needs to blow up basically to kill Ego. But between now and then you have like Ego using his planet to take down everyone there, Nebula saving Gamora, you've got Drax, Mantis basically using her powers to try and put Ego to sleep for her to be overpowered, Drax basically trying to save Mantis, Rocket, Quill, Yondu, everybody just working together to try and take down all these things that are coming at them from Ego's like planet. You finally get to see Ego just overpowering them, and while Drax is holding Mantis, getting done in quicksand. You see Groot getting squished by the little pocket that he's in. Yondu is getting covered up by rocks. Gamora and Nebula being overpowered here. That's where we get to see the true power that Quill has. You get Yondu basically telling him to use his heart, comparing it to like how he whistles with the arrow. Quill basically now overpowers Ego, taking him down. They're having this fight sequences. Everybody's going back to the ship. Groot turns the bomb on. Rocket, Groot, Nebula, Gamora, Drax, Mantis, all back on the ship, and they're basically flying off because Rocket doesn't want to lose more than one friend, which just another powerful sequence is there. The closeness and bond that they have with one another here. They're thinking that Quill is going to die. Quill is sacrificing himself, only for Yondu to then basically save Quill, put this the space thingy on him. Yondu sacrificing himself now, rather than the other way around with Quill. So Quill basically gets saved. Yondu sacrifices himself, kills himself. The planet gets blown up because of a bomb. They manage to escape, and then you get that nice sequence, a little hinted at back in the earlier part of the movie with Sylvester Stallone about Yondu never getting a Ravager's funeral. He actually does get that Ravager's funeral, and just a nice sequence, a nice funeral for Yondu. And the thing that melts your heart too is Kraglin's reaction to the Ravager's funeral too was just really well executed. A really solid entry into the trilogy here, but basically wrapping up the movie here, and honestly just all round really well written. I know there is a lot of flaws when it comes to this movie, but it is not a bad movie whatsoever. It's really well done, really well executed. Just some of the plots were just all over the place. Not one of the stronger ones, but definitely not one of the weaker ones here. A really good solid entry into the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy here, basically. But that battle wraps it up there, and then they go on to like Infinity War and Endgame, and Gamora dying, Nebula and Rocket spending 5 years with just the two of them and all that kind of stuff, to then now facing off in Volume 3, the aftermath of Endgame and the aftermath of basically Thor Love and Thunder, when they go off after leaving Thor behind to go on his ridiculous D-list movie adventure, basically. But Volume 3, for me, is one of the better MCU movies, a really, really strong candidate for one of the better movies since Endgame, and a beautiful way to just wrap up this whole trilogy. Like, James Gunn did such a brilliant job with this trilogy, just wrapping up everything here. Just so much to dive into here. So basically the opening sequences with Volume 3 comes at the hands of Rocket on the planet of nowhere. So you've got the events of Endgame, Infinity War, then you've got the events of Thor Love and Thunder, then you have the holiday special. So basically they're on the planet nowhere. They've basically bought it from the collector, long story short, basically. So they're on this planet. You just get to see Rocket's point of view. He's just walking around looking really bummed, basically, just going around seeing what everybody's doing in the planet there. We come to see that Quill is basically getting drunk because of his loss for Gamora here, and you get to see him just drinking away, passing out drunk. One of the shots as well in the trailer where you've got Nebula holding Quill, I thought really nice deception by James Gunn there. So that's actually part of the beginning of the movie. Everybody was speculating about how Quill might be the one dying because of the way she's holding him there, only to come to find out that it was actually him just being passed out drunk. So they basically put him in the bed, and that's where we get introduced to Adam Warlock, who was teased in the post-credit scene. I'll talk about more when it comes to Adam Warlock later on in the movie, but basically he comes and is trying to capture Rocket. He has a brilliant fight sequences with Drax, with Nebula. They're going back and forth with one another. A brilliant opening sequences there. We come to find out that Adam Warlock actually injures Rocket, but does not manage to take him for his mission, basically, because Nebula stabs him, so he just manages to escape. But we come to find out that Rocket is severely injured. They can't use the med pack because there's this kill switch inside him, which we come to find out is because of like what happened to him in the past. So they need to try and find a way to rescue Rocket and find the code to kill the kill switch. So they're basically on their way to All Corp to retrieve the file to find out how to get the kill switch turned off. And then we focus on Rocket's backstory, but his flashbacks are spread out throughout the whole movie, so you get to see little flashbacks here and there. They like go back and forth when it comes to present day and the flashbacks. Honestly, I'm just going to talk about the flashbacks all into this one particular scene. As frustrating it was as going like flying back and forth between the timelines, the backstory with Rocket was unbelievable. Like, I did not expect it to be this sad and this emotional. So we come to find out that Rocket was taken by the High Evolutionary, experimented on, picked apart at his brain, where they put him back in his cage, and that's where he meets his friends, the Walrus, the Rabbit, and Lila. And so throughout the flashbacks, we get to see him developing a friendship with these three characters, to the point where like they're laying down, laughing with each other, creating names for each other. So that's where we come to find out that Rocket, his name was because he wanted to fly a rocket. We come to find out Lila just wanted to be named Lila. The Walrus wanted to be called Teeth because he has big teeth, and Rabbit was she wanted to be called Floor because she was laying on the floor, which I don't know, just for me it just was hilarious. So they're just like having fun with each other. They're having this dream of like going to this planet where Counter Earth is going to basically be. They're thinking that they're going to be arriving there. You get to see High Evolutionary find out how intelligent Rocket is, because Rocket was able to explain how to fix an equipment to help him craft and master his experiments, Higher Evolutionary. But because he didn't figure that out, he was just so infuriated and frustrated and angry with Rocket for knowing that, and he didn't. Like, you got to see him being nice to Rocket a little bit in the flashbacks where he's sitting on his lap and that kind of stuff. But then once he sees that Rocket is cleverer than him, basically, he just went ape shit crazy, so frustrated and ballistic with him there, to the point where he eventually revealed that none of these creatures, none of his friends, are going to be going to the planet. They're just going to be incinerated because they're a abomination to him when it comes to designs that he's made. So as Rocket, the creativity that he has, he's able to create a key to escape. He opens the door. Lila's trying to escape with him, only for the High Evolutionary to shoot Lila, which the whole cinema was so shocked to see that. I couldn't believe that was where they went with, and that the scream that Rocket did after seeing Lila on the floor like that, just incredibly heartbreaking. And just James Gunn really perfected the villain when it comes to High Evolutionary, and once again we'll talk about him later on in the movie. That emotion that Rocket produces when it comes to that scream, and then the fury and the anger that he has where he rips High Evolutionary's face and just scratches him. The guards start like shooting, ending up killing the Walrus and the Rabbit, and you just see like the trauma and the sadness that you get to see with Rocket's backstory. Rocket then eventually escapes on a ship, leaves the High Evolutionary, and just like, God, like the backstory, like I did not think this would be how bad his backstory was. But Rocket manages to escape, and that's when we get his basically flashbacks in his past. So then we get back to present day. We come to find out that the group are now needing to go to Oscorp, and there's this particular sequences here when they're going towards the planet, I guess you call, like the anus looking thing, whatever that, I don't know if it's a planet, I don't know if it's something else. But as they're going through the shields, you get to see the sequence of like Mantis trying to help her brother out, trying to like express or vent out the trauma that he's going through here, trying to convince him to go visit his grandfather on planet Earth. So they set that up for what eventually will be the post-credit scene. But you basically just see Mantis trying to like help her brother out and get this emotion. You had this in a little bit when it comes to Drax, Mantis, and Quill, but Mantis basically not wanting to use her powers or anything like that to manipulate Quill's emotion, which she does eventually to do to Drax, but she's trying to explain, trying to like be a good sibling to Quill here. And so we get a little bit of that, and then we've come to find out that the Ravagers come to like help them out, and we get to see another Sylvester Stallone cameo scene here. And we come to find out that Gamora, this is going to be the new timeline Gamora, so not their Gamora but our Gamora, the one that is from 2014. So this is 2014 Gamora here, before the events of Guardians Volume 1 and 2. So she joining the crew, joining the Guardians to get the code for the kill switch. And when it comes to like Gamora and Quill, I know there was like a lot of criticism with Gamora not needing to be part of the movie, but the one thing that I like with James Gunn and what he did, obviously he didn't want to, had nothing to do with what happened in Infinity War and Endgame, or even like Thor Love and Thunder, but the good thing that came out of this when it comes to Gamora and Quill, because as the movie progresses, especially in the scene where Quill's professing his love and trying to tell her about like what's going on, what happened in the past two movies, with everybody also listening, the storyline and the writing when it comes to these two having by the end of the movie, Quill finally letting go of this Gamora, finally just like accepting the fact that these two aren't going to be together, which I thought was the right choice. That is one good aspect that comes out of these two here. But then you get to see a great sequence with them inside this planet. You've got a great appearance from Nathan Fillion here with him just delivering the lines. I know there was a bit of criticism when it comes to like James Gunn's wife was in the movie, Nathan Fillion was in the movie, and there was a bit of a distraction there. But that whole sequence inside that little anus looking planet, ship, whatever you're calling it there, I thought it was really well executed there, because as I mentioned in the Volume 2 criticism when it comes to Drax and Mantis is now starting to give back, so she's able to convince his god to fall in love with Drax. She's using her powers to make people look like idiots basically here. You got to see Quill using his intelligence there, managing to trick the god to get the anti-gravity working here, stopping the guards basically here and managing to escape. But once they managed to get the documents, the file about Rocket, we come to find out that the code for the kill switch isn't actually on the file, but they get to see this flashback of what happened to Rocket. They're all gathered around, shock, horror. Even Nebula's line about how even Thanos didn't do that much damage to her as like what Rocket's being put through, I just thought was just ridiculously writing here when it comes to that power and emotion that they're all seeing. You just to see all their faces there. And so they then go to decide that they need to go to like the counter Earth, where they come to find out that this High Evolution's right hand man, basically the one that honestly looks like Ned from the Spider-Man movies, Tom Holland's friend, for me that's what I was getting that vibes from him here. So basically they come to find out that he's the one that actually has the code, so they need to go to planet Counter Earth to try and retrieve it basically. So they're on their way there. We come to see another brilliant scene with Adam Warlock here. Him and Aisha are interrogating one of the Ravagers there, because basically they need to try and rescue Rocket once again here. And we get to see a brilliant scene of Adam trying to like do the interrogation skills only to just burn this Ravager to a crisp. And that lines that he's delivering with Aisha, I just thought were really well written. My only frustrating thing is with Adam Warlock, and I might as well bring this up now actually then, with Adam Warlock, he had a great character arc, but there just wasn't enough of him here. Like the opening sequence of 5 sequences, him versus Drax, him versus Nebula, there wasn't enough of that. There wasn't enough of being him for us to be able to see his powers, see how strong he is, how overpowering he is. He's Adam Warlock. He's incredibly strong, especially in the comic books here. So we didn't get to see enough of that. And when we did get to see him, a lot of it was used for comedy, which I'm okay with, but I just wanted more from that when it comes to Adam Warlock. They basically are now going to Counter Earth because Gamora used one of the comms that the burnt Ravager had, try and get Rocket once again here. So once they arrive in Counter Earth, you get to see a little bit from this in the trailer here. So you get to see these experiments that the High Evolutionary did with these creatures here, and then you get to see them basically going into this house. It's got very like 70s, 80s vibes to it here. You see the Statue of Liberty was a High Evolutionary holding a monkey. You get to see a lot of like poverty and stuff like that going in around the planet itself. But you've got Groot, Drax, Nebula and Quill entering the house to try and get more information here. They basically tell them where the High Evolutionary ship is. We get to see the first F word in the MCU, which I thought was brilliant. Like the way he just delivered it was really well written. Surprised James Gunn was able to get away with it, but I'm just so glad he did. Obviously the F word doesn't make or break a movie, but it was just the way it was delivered I thought was really well done there. So they get into the car, they're driving to the High Evolutionary ship to try and get the kill code here, where basically Nebula is forced to be waiting outside. So you've got Quill and Groot going into the High Evolutionary ship here. You see Quill and the High Evolutionaries, like little dialogue, little back and forth here. After this whole bickering, after this whole back and forth, we come to see a fight break out, shooting breaks out. Groot literally has arms coming out. He manages to have Quill's guns hidden in his back. They throw a bomb explodes, shooting sequences break out, fight sequences break out here. As this is going on, the High Evolutionary decides that this planet just needs to go to waste, so he decides to blow up the planet. So as all of this is going on here, while Drax and Mantis were waiting on the ship, they abandon the ship. They start driving off in a motorbike to go to the High Evolutionary ship to try and rescue Quill, Nebula, Groot. So Gamora is left by herself with Rocket in the ship, and that's where Adam Warlock arrives. And because of the whole blowing up the planet here, this takes into effect with Aisha getting blown up, Adam Warlock taking effect and getting blown up in the explosion to land on the ship. So he's very injured and wounded. Aisha, his mother, has been killed off. Gamora tries to take the ship and try to escape, while Quill, Groot and then the one that looks like Ned from Spider-Man. Basically, they get crashing out of the window with Quill holding Ned, Groot holding Quill. Groot now suddenly has wings, so they fly out of the ship before it takes off. You've got Nebula, Mantis and Drax jumping on the ship to try and rescue them. You've got Gamora now with the ship saving Quill and Groot. They eventually get the code. They eventually save Rocket, only before they have this little like Harry Potter sequences there where Harry Potter is in this white scene with Dumbledore before coming back to reality. We get that same sequence with Rocket when it comes to him meeting with Lila in the afterlife, her telling him that it's not his time, so that basically Rocket is saved, Rocket is alive. And so as Nebula, Drax and Mantis finally get inside the rocket, you have a brilliant confrontation between Nebula and Mantis, and this is what I was talking about earlier. So Mantis and Nebula talking and bickering with one another, basically insulting Drax, only for then Mantis confirming how like Drax is the only one that doesn't hate himself, which the lines that were delivered between the two of them just well written. She insults Drax, basically calling him an imbecile, basically calling him stupid, and actually meaning it. She sees how hurt he is and then goes by against her rules, which she said earlier in the movie, where she doesn't like use her powers to like mess with people's emotions. She makes sure that Drax forgets exactly what was said there. We also come to find out that there's hundreds of children inside here, but they eventually get captured. And then we get to see again the dynamic here. So you've got Mantis and Nebula trying to calm these children down by yelling, by doing different methods. And then you see the true, like, not Drax the Destroyer, but Drax the Father coming in and, like, basically making these kids laugh, trying to understand, like, what they're saying here. And you really get to see, like, the fatherly side of Drax here. And so because they got captured, they are now, like, facing these three creatures. I honestly forgot what they were called, but Mantis is able to use her power to basically befriend them and use it to their advantage here. And so in order to stop the High Evolutionary here, so you've got Gamora, Rocket, Adam Warlock and Quill in the ship. Karengillan and Cosmo are using the planet to basically try and stop the High Evolutionary here. And even like Karengillan and Cosmo, like their little back and forth dynamic that they had, I thought was really well executed as well. So like in the beginning of the movie, you've got Karengillan calling Cosmo a bad dog, and that eventually does pay off when Cosmo saves Karengillan from like the creatures later on in the movie, and him calling her a good dog. But even like throughout the movie, you had like scenes where we get back to like what they're doing in the movie, and like Cosmo just really shocked and or in the fact that like she was called a bad dog. So it was just like a really nice little character arc, little story arc with those two there. So they're taking the planet, trying to destroy the High Evolutionary's ship and destroy everything that he's worked on. And so because of everything going on, everything just turning into a shit show, High Evolutionary's obsession with Rocket causes his other like right hand man and his close guards to basically turn on him. And that's where we really get to see the power of the High Evolutionary just wiping out everybody inside that room. And then you just get this brilliant sequence. So everybody's reunited in terms of the Guardians here. Instead of just running back and escaping, Rocket decides he just wants to like no more hiding, no more running. We get that line in the trailer, and we have this honestly one of my favorite scenes in the whole trilogy. I believe it's a one-shot scene, but I can't 100% confirm because of all the visual effects and everything like that. But just that hallway scene where everybody's like, the camera's just spinning around. You see all these characters just battling with one another. Every single Guardian has a chance to shine. You see Nebula, Gamora, Rocket, Groot, Drax, Mantis, Quill, just everybody just like fighting with all these creatures, everybody getting that chance to like really shine in that breathtaking shot sequence in that hallway scene. They start rescuing everybody, so they start rescuing the kids. Rocket goes to rescue all the animals as well, so nobody's being left behind here. And that's when the High Evolutionary tries to like stop Rocket. And in terms of the High Evolutionary, I've seen a lot of criticism when it comes to him and how he's basically being called like just like a villain that yells a lot. He had a lot of like depth to him here. He's not a villain that has a backstory. For me, he's just a flat out piece of shit. Like, you hated the High Evolutionary, you hated what he did to Rocket, you hated what he was doing to like all these creatures and these humans and these kids and everything like that. He was a good solid villain for me when it comes to the three villains from the whole like trilogy here. My only criticism when it comes to this is that he wasn't utilized enough. Like the big battle scene, the big fight sequences here, he was able to like throw Rocket around left, right and center, but then literally when everybody's getting involved, everybody has like a little shot with him and he's just flying around taking hit after hit after hit. Like, it just made him come across very weak. Like, he wasn't able to get a shot in, he wasn't able to like fight the Guardians or like make them really try hard to beat him. It was very quick. Like, everybody took a shot. Gamora stabs him, his face peels off, so we get to see the real damage that Rocket did, and they just left him like on the ship there. Most likely he died after the ship got blown up, but for me, I wanted to see more of like a confrontation between him and the rest of the Guardians there, rather than just a quick kick, punch, stab, that's it there. So that's my only nitpick when it comes to that. But after that whole sequence takes place, they're all like escaping. Cosmo the Dog is using her kinetic powers to use the ship to get everybody from the High Evolutionary ship to the Nowhere planet. Everybody's escaping there, but once again, as I mentioned in the volume 1 here, Quill's running, his Walkman drops, he's running back to go get it, and that causes him to basically, because Cosmo loses the ability to keep it connected, he's having to try and find a way to jump into the ship there, and that's when I genuinely thought they were going to kill off Star-Lord, Peter Quill. He's jumping, he hasn't made it, you see his face getting swollen, and that's where you see Adam Warlock, who basically was rescued by Groot earlier after recovering, after being helped on like Peter Quill's ship to the planet of Nowhere. So he sees Groot basically saving him, so he returns the favor and he basically saves Peter Quill. So you've got Peter Quill's swollen face here, he's saved, so basically nobody's died. And there was a bit of criticism when it comes to that as well, is that like, oh, nobody died, there was no impact. I agree to some extent that I feel like if one person did die, because everybody was speculating how it was either going to be Rocket or Drax. Drax even confirmed he's not returning to Guardians, and so Drax is, for me, I thought it was going to be Drax as the one to die, or Rocket. Yeah, one of them dying would have had a big impact, would have destroyed it, but the way James Gunn wrapped up everything for me, I thought like them not dying and what everybody's going through at the end really was well done. Like, for in terms of Drax, for example, he went from being Drax the Destroyer in volume 1 to basically exploring his backstory, him telling us about him being a father, to now he's actually going to be able to be like a father, like to all these kids that were rescued in volume 3. So him and Nebula are going to be staying behind to basically look after these children. Nebula's story arc, for me, she was a standout in this movie, going from like vengeance, going from like wanting to kill Gamora, her sister, to now basically being the heart and soul of the Guardians here, and like her character arc there. Rocket's backstory, this emotionally heartfelt backstory that he had, the trauma that he went through, everything that he did, basically him surviving, him forming this new team here. Peter Quill, they set up everything with his grandfather here, to now him going to planet Earth to be with his granddad, and that post-credit scene, even like the end of the post-credit scene too, when it comes to like Peter Quill and him being back, they're saying that Star-Lord, the legendary Star-Lord, will return. Most likely, I'm guessing he's going to be on a Disney Plus series soon or something like that, but his story is wrapped up now with him going living with his grandfather. Mantis as well, for example, like now that she was doing everything that Ego wanted, to then doing everything that the Guardians wanted, now she's going to do what she wants, so she's going to go off on her own separate adventure. And you get to see then Gamora, who's now with the Ravagers there, so she's going to be on her own separate thing with the Ravagers, so she hasn't joined the Guardians. Like I mentioned earlier, like they've wrapped up everything with Gamora and Quill coming to the fact that, accepting the fact that this isn't the same Gamora, they're not going to be together, no kiss, no nothing like that. There was even a line where she said, I bet we were fun together, just wrapping up everything nicely there. So Gamora's off in her own world, and you've got this new Guardians team here with Adam Warlock, Groot, Rocket, Cosmo, Kraglin, and even one of the children, Phyla, I believe she was called. They're going to be forming the new Guardians of the Galaxy. So everything was just wrapped up and written so perfectly when it comes to like James Gunn's trilogy of Guardians of the Galaxy here. Even to the fact where we even like spent so much time with these characters that you got to see Groot, like we got to hear Groot saying, I love you guys, and it was said that this is because we spent so much time with the characters, we spent so much time with Groot, we were finally able to understand Groot. So he basically said, I am Groot, but basically we were able to understand it as saying, I love you guys, because they even like brought that up during the movie as Gamora saying, you guys are just making things up when it comes to Groot saying, I am Groot. But because of eventually she was able to understand him towards the end of the movie, and we were able to do the same thing. So just everything was just done so well. James Gunn wrote it from the start to the finish. I know there was drama behind the scenes with James Gunn getting fired, James Gunn getting rehired, but he wrote everything. Everything was done by 2018, before all the drama took place. tweaked a little bit because of events from Infinity War and Endgame, but he already had a clear vision of what was going to be happening from Volume 1 to Volume 3, and this is what makes it such a great trilogy, such an important, impactful, well-written 3-movie arc here. And that for me is just why this makes it such a brilliant, well-written trilogy. If I'm ranking them, I'm ranking it Volume 3, Volume 1 and Volume 2 because of everything that I mentioned just now. But overall, I really loved what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Such a fun movie, such an entertaining movie, one that you just cannot help but have a smile on your face. You go through a roller coaster of emotions when it comes to each character and the storyline and the arc that you want. You don't want the movie to end. You want to see more of each character as well, but just everything was done so well. So I'm so happy with this movie. I'm so happy with this trilogy. Overall, I really loved this movie, really loved this trilogy. Now, this was a bit of a long video there, so for those of you that are still watching, I highly appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to this video essay, this in-depth spoiler review for the whole trilogy here. Please let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comment section down below. If you're going to rank them as well, what would you rank them in terms of Volume 1, 2 and 3, and also your thoughts about Volume 1, 2 and 3. Please let me know in the comment section down below. But that about wraps it up for this video here. Again, thank you so much for watching and thank you so much for listening here. I have also got a Twitter, link is in the description down below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos here on the channel. Keep an eye out, there's going to be the weekly entertainment news video coming out later on this week. But again, thank you so much for watching. This is YK Reviews. Peace.